What's the easiest, the fastest, and probably the most fun way to create a whole bunch of junk journal ephemera in one go? If your answer is masterboards, then we can be friends. So let's create 3 masterboards in 3 easy steps, and let's turn them into a bunch of cohesive ephemera for our junk journals. Hi there, this is Luise Heinzl. Welcome to this video and also the following videos, because I'm going to do a little step-by-step thingy here on my channel. I want to create 3 masterboards, and yes, this is going to become a really beginner-friendly thing. Even if you know me, you know I don't like this word beginner so much in combination with junk journaling, because I'm convinced with junk journaling there are no beginners, yeah. But that's a discussion for another day. So I want to do this really step by step. I want to do this really basic, really versatile, but I want to have cool and cohesive ephemera in the end. So what we are going to do is I will show you 3 videos with a total of 3 masterboards done in 3 steps. Is that good? I'm hoping. So let's start. I want to use 3 sheets of paper. This is the mixed media heavy stock by Ranger and Tim Holtz. This paper can handle a ton of wet mediums. That's why I want to use this. You could take some watercolor paper, you could take whatever kind of paper you want to use. If you are planning to do the steps like I do them and you want to use ink and especially water later, please make sure that your paper is not too flimsy, otherwise you will hate me for the rest of your life. And I don't want that. So what we are going to do is we are going to start with a stencil. This one is THS 143, I guess. Oh my goodness, here's some glitter paste on it. I can't read it so well. I think it's 143 by Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. This stuff here is Vintage Photo archival ink, waterproof ink for the first step, because I want to use wet mediums later. So I want to make sure that this first layer is going to become waterproof. Would it be a really big problem if you wouldn't have a waterproof ink? No. If you don't have a waterproof ink, just take your normal ink, which might be then water soluble, and do this. And then just do the other steps and be surprised that you also will get a really cool result. So will you see that? Well, you will see that when I use ink on the other paper. I could do that. Let's try that out. So this next stencil is THS 058. And the first thing I want to do here is I want to randomly stencil over this. You can use whichever stencil you might have. I want to have my ephemera butterfly themed in the end. That's why I have chosen the flowers and these numbers, because I think that fits really good to the rest I've already chosen for this, but please use what you have. So that's that. Let's put this aside for a while. I want to do this really efficiently and strategically somehow. Let's take the second sheet and let's take these again. But on this sheet, let's try a water-soluble medium. I've chosen the Distress Oxide Ink Scorched Timber, so that we then can later on also compare what we like better. And I also do this so that you can see that it really doesn't matter what you use. And if you just started, for example, with these things, and and you don't have so many things in your stash yet, then you will see that this can also give you really nice results if you use a water-soluble medium. So that's that. And for the third sheet, let's also take a water-soluble medium, but this time I'm going to use the Scotch Timber ink so that we can see how that looks later as well. So that's that. This was the oxide ink and this was the archival ink. And in my next step, I want to stamp to all of the three with, on the one hand, some stamps which have writing and letters, and you know, that always looks really, really cool, I think, on a masterboard. I have chosen this stamp set, Just Thoughts, CMS 078, by Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz, and this one here, which is faded type, CMS 397. You could use any stamp you have. If you don't like these script stamps, choose something else. And what I also want to use are these. These are called Flutter, CMS 294. I want to start with these. And for this, I also want to choose a waterproof ink. And I think I will do that on all of the three sheets because, to be honest, I don't like it when script stamps or stamp impressions made with script stamps, can I say that, get faded in the end, or you know, when that gets abstract. I don't like that so much. But you could also, of course, use a non-permanent ink. That would cause that this would bleed later a little bit from the wet mediums we are going to use in a second. But yeah, that's, I would say, personal preference. If I would not have any permanent ink, then I would definitely try it with a non-permanent ink. But you know, you do you. So I'm going to randomly stamp on here, mainly, as you probably can see, there where we only have the blank paper yet and where no stenciling is. Obviously this is then overlapping a little bit, but that's totally fine because that adds to our final design of this whole procedure. I've also chosen some stamps like this, for example, which have a little bolder font, because I think that can look really cool in the end. And what you also can try is, and that's something I really enjoy doing, use the first and the second / the third, the fourth, and so on generation of a stamp impression. So for example, if I stamp this here, there's still a little bit ink on my stamp left, so that I, for example, could stamp this here again, so that I then get a really nice and faded impression of that compared to this, which is really black. This is more gray, and that can also add to our design here. And what I learned yeah, from making masterboards, or how can I say that, is that I can really just go for it without thinking what I'm doing here, because the thing is, with masterboards, you can basically do whatever you want. It will always, always turn out great. There's no exception. Masterboards have never disappointed me. Even if you perhaps in the beginning think, oh my goodness, what is this? This is a total chaos and a total mess here on my paper. I think that is totally normal if you would think that, especially if you perhaps have never done something like this before. don't stop, okay? Just go on. Even if you think, oh, it's ugly, or what am I doing here? This looks like a whole chaos. Please just go on, okay? And please make sure that you stamped or stenciled or whatever you do to the very edge of your paper, so that we don't lose the edges here later, and that we don't have to deal with getting those nice as well, because we want to cut these later and make the most out of these sheets. And for that I like to pay attention to stamping and stenciling to the very edge. I'm also going to stamp some of my butterflies on here now, and I also like when they are only half. You can also let these now overlap with the other things you've already made, and also use the second generation. So then the next, and for this video the last step, is adding some liquid mediums, and especially some color, because we have some neutrals here now, and that is brown and black, and I want to add some color now. So what I can suggest for this step is choose colors which you, for example, need in your next journal. Choose the color palette of your next journal, or the journal you are currently working on. Yeah, perhaps you have a journal where you have evergreen bow and fossilized amber as your color combination, and you want to make some ephemera. Choose those colors, because then you already have something cohesive in the end, and not only cohesive but also harmonious with your journal or the project where you want to put these in. If you don't have a journal yet and you want to think about a future journal, think about the colors you want to use in that journal, okay? And then choose those. I have chosen evergreen bow and fossilized amber. In this case, it's the oxide version of these ink pads, but you could also, of course, take the ink pads as well. I wish I could demonstrate that here in this video, or yeah, in general, because that would be cool to compare, but I don't have the ink pads of these colors, unfortunately. So I'm going to put some of my ink here, and I'm trying to, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. I'm sorry, I was just checking if I'm in the frame. I put this all over my media mat here because I want to do this in a really efficient way. So, and without thinking. Whew! Oh my goodness, don't spritz to your stuff. Then I'm going to do it like this. And now you can see we have all of these little drops here. What you see here on this mat, you will approximately get on this paper, because we will transfer this on here now. So that means if you have these weird shape here, this weird shape, you know, can you see that this looks really weird? Then you would get that to your paper as well. If I would press the paper in here, I would get this shape to my paper. If you want that, just leave it. If you don't want that, add more water. Not too much water, okay? And now you could also even go through this with your finger. A lot of people do that. I like it better when I can just take this, you know, and do it like this, because that way I get some solid areas of the ink in some spots, and I also get these little dots here. Can you see that? And I really like those, because that gives a really cool effect in the end and really cool details. What you also could do is, and for that I'm going to take the second sheet. This was the Scotch Timber Oxide ink. You can also, and we are going to use the rest here as well, obviously, you can also dip it in there like so. Then you would get a totally different result. But also these little details here. Why is my camera not focusing? Oh, okay, now here we go. And if you would do the thing, you know, with these little droplets, is that a word? These little things we had in the first step, and you would dip the paper in like so, you would also get a different result to this. I will show you that on the third sheet. And here you can see the coverage with the evergreen bow is not so much like on this, because we've just dipped it in and not, you know, I've not put it completely over here. Yeah, but that should be a logical thing. The more you press it, the more ink you will transfer to the paper. So we are going to make this dry. If you are new to these mediums, please make sure that this is dry before you add more of the medium to your thing, because you don't want to get water into your ink pads. So let's do this again. Here I will not add so much because here's already pretty much of the evergreen bow, and I want to use the fossilized amber in a second as well, and you know, I don't want to overload my masterboards with the colors. Let's add more water, and then, you know, you could also break I'm so sorry, these harsh lines here with your finger like so, or by adding more water. On the first one, I've just put it on here, so let's take this as a chance to dip it in and look how that looks then, but especially with these little drops. This here was the Scotch Timber ink. Can you see that? We have a more solid coverage there where bigger puddles were because of more water, and where these drops have been, we have all of these little dots there, and I find that really, really cool. That looks so amazing. I really love that. Even if I know that many people do that differently and go with their finger through the stuff, but that's also personal preference, obviously. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I want to layer these colors. That means we are going to take our heat tool now and dry all of these sheets completely before we add the next color. So all of these are dry now. And that means that we can take the next color and layer that over this color. If you would do this whole procedure without drying these in between, then the colors would blend. So that means wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. And since this is dry, we get a really cool layered effect if we do the following thing now. I've added the fossilized amber here. I'm going to add my water. Get rid of these harsh shapes. And since this is a lot, let's take the one with the oxide ink, which for the stenciling, Let's do it here like so. And one thing I really didn't pay attention to in the past, I did that in my eyes wrong, yeah, and in my eyes is like neon bold with a square around and thousands of the opposite of question mark explanation marks, because it's only my opinion. But you know, when I say that I did that wrong for a long time, then it's only my opinion and my personal taste, because you can do what you want. But what I find I did wrong for years is I pressed the paper too hard into the medium. So I did this, and then I pressed my, well, let's do it. I pressed my hand like so, you know, like this. I did that. There are tons of videos where I do this the whole time. Here it's not so extremely visible. This is not such a good example because here's not enough ink. Let's just put more of the medium here, and I will show you what happens then. Because if you press too hard, then I think this layered effect and this really, you know, what this medium can do it's gone then when you press too hard. And somehow I didn't pay attention to that, even if I normally really pay attention to, you know, when someone shows a technique or so, but I didn't get it. So what I did was, I have taken this and then I pressed my hand on it like so, but what you then get is this. I mean, cool, yeah, nice. Nice, nearly blended watercolor effect, but this here, I mean, the color is here, yeah. It did transfer from the matte to the paper, but this is not what we can get from those mediums, yeah. It's not the best we can get, because when we do it like this and just carefully dip it here, we can get these cool effects with all of these dots. On this sheet it's hard to see because we have so much of the green there. Let's do it with this one here. So just carefully, can you see that? Put your hand on there, and then you get all of these wonderful tiny details. And if you would dry this, add more ink, dry this, add more ink, you could yeah, make this effect even extremer. I think the most of you know that you know, these are 2 layers now. If we would do this even more and you know, add more layers, then we would get an even more detailed effect with this with these inks and oxide inks. But that is also something, especially for masterboards and this kind of masterboard, I like to decide that very spontaneously, because I don't want to overload these with my layers with the ink. And here it's already pretty extreme, isn't it? Here, especially with the yellow, I think it could get a little more yellow. Was that confusing? Sorry. If you wanted to have more of these cool effects, which the Distress ink and Distress oxide ink could give, dry it, do the thing with the dipping again, dry it, dip it in again, dry it, and so on. Then you would get a really way more extremely layered look than this is. If you like it, leave it like it is. And I think I already like it. The fact that we've used for the stenciling, I mean, the oxide ink and the ink, instead of only the permanent archival ink, is not so extreme like I thought. I thought it would bleed way more. You can see it a little bit there where the numbers are, that the brown is a little bit, you know, reactivated by the green and the yellow, but it's not so extreme like I thought. I thought the stenciling would disappear way more, but it's okay. Yeah, I like that it is so concrete, but that shows that you can also use water-soluble mediums, obviously. Well, that also depends perhaps a little bit on the paper, yeah? I don't want to confuse you, but, you know, if you do this with non-permanent mediums and you put the colors over here with the water, and your stenciling is going to disappear, then it's probably because of the paper, yeah? When then the oxide ink or the ink is going to be reactivated. So I'm going to dry this again, and instead of adding more layers with my ink pads, I want to show you that you can also use the sprays. So I have the fossilized amber oxide spray here, evergreen bow oxide spray, and evergreen bow spray stain, even if I don't know if I want to really use this, but we will see. So what I want to do here now is I want to get some splatters. You know, you could even spritz it here and splatter it with a paintbrush, but why? We have this, it's easy, you know. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm not pressing this fast and completely down, but just the tiniest little bit and very slowly. So I will demonstrate what happens if I press normal. Then we would get something like this. This is not what I want. When I press it down completely and very fast, then you would just get more ink like this here, but I want these little drops. Can you see that? But you could also obviously take a paintbrush and just splatter that on. But this is faster. You can see that. Innerhalb. Yeah, that is German. Within a few seconds you can get these splatters to your papers. So then let's go on with Evergreen Bow for this one, because here is a little bit more. Well, let's put Evergreen Bow over here and Fossilized Ember over here, so that we have a cool contrast. And here, let's here try the spray stain. The spray stain, compared to the oxide spray, is translucent. Oh my goodness, this spray bottle is hard to handle. Oh my goodness, I'm just spritzing to myself. I'm so sorry. Okay, I will make this work. Let's see. You could also, normally, I would not do that. This on a project where I want to add splatters in a controlled way, you know, where it matters where they come to the paper. I would definitely not do it with this thing, but with the paintbrush. But here it really doesn't matter. I just want to have some of these tiny things here, but I want more yellow. I will not dry this because I like the reaction of these mediums, but you could dry this. But in this case, there where this is now, it will blend into each other, and I really like that. Okay, so when we have that, it looks pretty wild, I know. We are going to take out our heat tool again and dry these. So this is how they look when it's dry, and I really love this combination with the Evergreen Bow and the Fossilized Ember. That looks really cool. And what you hopefully can see now is that they already turned out really different. Since we used our mediums in a little different way on each of them, they already are different. But at the same time, because of the same stencils, the same stamps, and the same colors, they are cohesive. Does that make sense? And I really like that, because we have now 3 pieces where we can decide how to go on, and in the end you will see we have a ton of ephemera which looks absolutely different, even if it's made from one and the same stuff, and it's cohesive at the same time and harmonious for your next journal. So if you want to follow along and also follow along with the next video, your homework would be I feel weird to say that but it's like that. I mean, if you want to craft along with the next video, then you would need this, yeah? If you want to craft along, your homework would be to create 3 of these with the mediums you have, and then in the next video I want to show you how to collage on these with little snippets. I have already prepared some here. Thank you very much for watching. If there are any questions, please throw them into the comment section below this video, and I will try my best to answer those as soon as possible. Thanks for your time and thanks for watching. I hope this was a little idea for you, and I'm obviously hoping that we will see the next time. Bye!